If you load it up big, you better clear the rest. The solvent list takes away all my stress. Life's been feeling like kind of a mess. I'll never let a hater make me think less, because everything before this was just a test.
Bagsy Chronicles.
I'm riding, all the homies with me. Yeah, we've been getting hella faded. Just like our eyes, we be staying low-key. Vibing out, always staying medicated. I'm riding, all the homies with me. Yeah, we've been getting hella faded. Just like our eyes, we be staying low-key. Vibing out, always staying medicated. I'm about to go up in a blaze. I don't give a fuck.
Welcome back to the Bagseed Chronicles. As always, it has been too long. I am your host, Uncle Dig, and today I have a lovely interview with Dr. Grenskye from Red Scare Seed Company. Coming up on the show, I've got plenty of stuff. I've got stuff to produce. I've got a free shit company send me. I've got garden updates I owe you folks. But for now, please enjoy this captivating interview with Dr. Grenskye from Red Scare Seed Company. Right? Meow. Everyone, join me in welcoming to the Bagseed Chronicles Dr. Grenskye from Red Scare Seed Company. Dr. Grenskye is a breeder extraordinaire and has been growing cannabis for over 20 years. Welcome to the Bagseed Chronicles, Dr. Grenskye.
Hey, thanks for having me back.
I enjoy it every time. I always love having you on. I love growing your indica genetics specifically. What are you smoking on today?
Fuely Wed. I'm smoking on it's Rainbow Belt 3.0 across the wedding fuel, which is wedding cake, GMO fuel F3. Smoking on the last of that today, and actually smoking on some seeded up Red Eye Jedi from Bodhi Seeds. It's Skywalker OG crossed to 88G.
Okay.
And so I crossed that to spiked milk, which is cereal milk crossed to the wedding fuel. I just did a really small pollination on that, and sometimes the bud comes out. It's so frosty and it looks so good. I have to smoke it even if it's seeded, And
Yeah.
This Red Eye Jedi is one of those. It's just really heavy on the Skywalker OG terps and kind of smells like dirty feet. It's really good stuff.
Yeah, Skywalker is one of those things that if it's crossed into something, I generally go for it. Like if I'm at a dispensary or if someone's offering me a couple different choices, if they've got like an Afghan or something with Bubba in it, which is also Afghan, and then or like anything called a skunk. It doesn't have to be the real skunk. Any skunk I'm usually down with.
Yeah, I'm pretty much in the same boat there. I
Um,
like those. I like those raunchy terps. The ones that kind of peel your nose back a little bit.
I do too. And honestly, I find that I like those more homegrown. Like when I go to the dispensary and I get raunchy terps, I start to worry like, man, is this a good raunchy weed or is this weed not good and it's raunchy? And so I like to know more where it comes from when you get those raunchy terps. I feel like I have trust issues.
I think we all do at this point. It always sucks when you go to a dispensary or something and you get something that's supposed to be raunchy, and then it just doesn't have that same appeal, and that happens all too often. I feel like the big grows have a lot of trouble getting those terpene profiles down. When it comes to sweet candy gas, they can do that shit all day, but
Yeah.
it's crazy that, but Kush mints, things like that, I have no problem typically buying something like that from a dispo because I know what it's going to be.
Right.
But if I go in for a GMO cross or if I go in for something skunky, I'm almost always extremely disappointed and hate myself a little bit for being so gullible when I go in there, It's like, you stupid son of a bitch. You knew this wasn't going to be raunchy. You knew what you were getting into. And now you're stuck with these trash mids that you thought were going to be something special.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very
Yeah.
seldom.
And I
Like,
feel, oh, go ahead.
no, go ahead.
I
It's just,
I feel like I didn't appreciate those candy terps until I grew them at home because I didn't gravitate toward those in the dispensary for the longest time. And then I grew a couple auto flowers that really put on the candy flavors. And I was like, oh, because I feel like a lot of the terp profiles you get at the dispensary are kind of washed out. And
They
so
are.
when you get a good home cure with a nice long dry or even a short dry that's just not rushed and you didn't drop the shit on the ground or throw it on a tarp when you brought it in, you like really babied it. A lot of times those little things add up to like big terpene preservation.
Yeah. You didn't over dry it and then have to add moisture packs back in, you know. That's a big one too. You know, so many times they'll just over dry their bud and kill off so many of the compounds and terpene profiles, and then by the time they rehydrate that shit, all you're left with is a monoterp, that
Yeah.
sweet terpene. And you know it stands out, but at the same time, when you grow that at home, you're getting so many nuanced flavors and fumes. Sometimes with the candy stuff, I'll get hints of paint thinner and things like that.
Yes, you get the weird chem
Yeah,
smells.
that you never get from a dispo because they're just they're not putting the same level of care into it. Maybe I don't know.
Now, I will say there have been dispensaries in Oregon that have really like periodically really pleasantly surprised me. And I bought stuff there that was almost like something my buddy was really excited about and gave me. It becomes rarer and rarer as the Oregon market develops, but there are a couple of dispensaries whose bud buyers like really know what they're doing here in
That's
Southern Oregon.
Yeah, we don't get that here in Illinois. We just don't get that. Everything's MSOs. The governor here, he touts the our cannabis program as being the most socially equitable, in the country, and claims that we have more diversity in ownership than any other state. But when you really get down to it, it's just MSOs, creating minority or female figureheads to run their subsidiary company. Um,
Right, yeah.
and then you've got one MSO with three different companies, and times that by four. You might go into a dispensary here and see 12 different brands, but it's really owned by three or four companies.
There's a
um
lot of that here, but there's also just people have been growing good weed in Oregon for so long, and they've kind of
yeah,
been doing it aggressively and bigly for so long that I feel like even our like mid-tier producers are bringing a lot more to the table than someone that's only been growing in the Midwest really at scale for like what, 5 years,
yeah,
maybe.
man, yeah.
And
And
I'm not even trying to
I
cast
agree.
aspersions.
No, I mean, Oregon was always the mecca for me. When I was younger, it seemed like every other year I was making the trip, from Kentucky or Tennessee where I was living and growing, and I was like determined to get out and try to find a place in the grow scene out there. It never panned out for me. I never met the right people, but I would drop everything and just quit my job and either take my car or hitchhike or take a Greyhound, and I would head out, to basically I would get off in Weed and go up to Garberville, through Arcata and end up in Eugene. And
Okay, you came right through where I'm at.
yeah, yeah. And that for me was it was a pilgrimage of sorts. It was back then in the early 2000s, it was almost spiritual to like get out and get free, see the Pacific, because for somebody that's landlocked in Kentucky like I was my whole life, grew up poor, we didn't have yearly vacations and things like that. So for me, in my 20s, just getting out and being able to like take off and try, even if I failed, I failed every single time, came back broke, homeless, no car, you know,
Jeez, yeah, really tried.
but yeah, but worked myself back from it, sling some pounds, end up at the car, get a rental house, and then I'm growing again within a few months. So and then within a year, I'm like, I'm sick of this fucking place. I got to get back out there. And and lose all my money again.
Oh my. What a weird cycle some young hustlers get themselves into.
Yeah, and I just for me, I wanted out. I didn't necessarily, growing in Kentucky and Tennessee back then was just so stressful. I dodged a few raids. Um, there were times, in Tennessee, I was growing like 200 plants, and once I moved out, I actually looked at the law. I didn't even bother looking to see what
Oh
the grow
my.
laws were. Because I was here, I am running, 50 to 100 seeds. You got 20, 30 plants in flower, and then you got 20, 30 mid-sized plants. You're already at 100. If you
Right.
double up for a big run for the spring, all of a sudden you're at 300. Um, yeah, so one plant was a felony in Tennessee, and yeah, I was just banging it out in some main street, outside
You
of
would have
Jackson.
ended up with 30 plus years.
Oh yeah, yeah. I would still be locked up probably is what's fucking crazy about it, or
You were
freshly
you
out.
were banging 200 in a suburban house?
Yeah, I wouldn't call it suburban. It's just a small
Right.
country town. I was
Okay,
kind
I
of on
got
a
you.
I was on a secondary main street. Like it was weird. You had the main street that ran through town, and there was
Okay.
a gas station, and then there was a little secondary street, and I lived on a house, where I could see the gas station. So immediately I was like, I'm gonna get a job at the gas station so I can, pretty much watch my house. And so
Nice.
I did that, and I worked with, a really nice Pakistani family for like, you know, 2 years. They were family to me. It was really nice. He wanted me to come back with him and meet his family and all that. And I'm like, post 9/11, I'm like, hey, Abdul, I don't think I can, go back with you to Pakistan and never make it back to my country. Like if I go with you, I have to stay there forever, and I'm not ready for that.
I think now, depending on the area, you could swing it, but I wouldn't.
Oh yeah, things 20 years later, things are different, But '04,
Oh
that's
yeah,
not
no way.
yeah.
No,
Things were
yeah.
things were really weird then.
Things got weird and they didn't really become the new kind of weird until like 2010 or so. It took a while
Yeah,
for that
you
whole
know,
9/11 vibe to kind of shift.
yeah, and then again, there have been a few shifts where things have just gotten stranger and stranger. 2012 was kind of strange for me for some reason. Seemed like a huge shift, and then COVID,
Yeah.
obviously, COVID shifted for everybody. And then obviously '07, the financial
Yeah.
crisis, and that's one thing I'll hit on too. I think it was like '04. I went out to Cali and I came back and worked and worked. And then I went back in '07 and the housing market had just gone to shit.
Yeah.
Every place that used to be for rent was just for sale and just, just sitting, or, it was impossible to find a place to rent. And that's what got me, one of the times I went out there is just, the economy basically collapsed on us. And,
Yeah.
hey, '07's not really shit compared to what's going on now. So,
Well,
you know,
now it's just a sustained almost like proletarianization of large segments of the American working class. I don't want to get too much into politics, but I mean, people are
that's
scraping
it.
by in a way that hasn't been true in a long time. Having to,
Uh,
being forced to.
Forced. Yeah. And so many families are so proud it's just going unspoken. And that's the sad part about it. If some of these upper to middle class families uh, actually spoke up about their problems they were having and didn't try to hide their financial problems, perhaps some change would happen. But because they're too ego, too full of pride to say, hey, we're having trouble too, you know, the middle class, the lower middle class, and the proletariat, the true working class, are really suffering because of it.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that's why we need to make sure that people know how to produce things at home, whether it's wheat or eggs or whatever you can. I think if you've got the space, if you're taking the means of production into your own hands with some commodity you use, You're gonna, if you get somewhat proficient at it, you're gonna end up producing somewhat of a surplus that you can parlay into either financial or neighbor favors, which are sometimes more valuable than money because you can't tax it.
They really are, yeah. Especially, if you have neighbors that they may not even necessarily be your type of people, but
Right.
when shit hits the fan, you're not asking, what political party you're affiliated with. At least I'm not.
Mm-mm.
I'm looking to either help another human out or be helped by another human. Um, I'm not in it for, political gain or parody or anything like that. Splitting sides in 2024 about that is, even though it's an election year, it just seems redundant. I feel like we've lost if we're still talking about that. And unfortunately, we are, and we have lost. But that's a different subject altogether.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. We can definitely get in the weeds with politics, but we can stick to the weed. There's plenty of politics just around the niche subject of cannabis cultivation to
Most
keep me
definitely.
busy. I
Yeah.
know that I've been watching it. They used to call it Rohrbach Far, and now it's called something else. The medical protection in Congress, where they're not gonna. It basically, it's like Congress telling DOJ leave the legal states and the medical states alone.
Yeah.
That amendment or whatever was not renewed this last session. It didn't come out of committee. So as far as I know, I heard that they were going to let it expire, then it expired, they didn't renew it, and then I heard nothing.
Yeah.
Now, with the way our government is, that could literally mean nothing. It's just gridlock and no one's going to do anything. Or, depending on how the next couple of elections go, they could be like, you know, telling me I have to politely coming and telling me to chop down my plants. I don't know. You know what I mean? It's so wild that you can't even look at what's going on in Congress and really extrapolate what that means into reality.
Right. Because such few things are actually accomplished in Congress.
Right.
Most things, like you said, are just gridlocked and just stalemated for years and years and years. And that's just how bureaucracies are set up to work.
Yeah.
That's how they keep their jobs and get reelected. And, it's just the promise of, something passing or not passing is basically what these guys are running on.
Yeah. I had a changing the subject. Last time we talked, it was like maybe 10 months ago, last year for sure. You said you were talking about getting chickens. Did you ever pull the trigger on that?
I did not.
Oh, dang.
Life, man, I'm just so busy. I've
Yeah.
invested so much time coaching my son's baseball team and things like that. That chickens are coming. I'm hoping by spring, um, possibly late fall,
Okay.
getting some. Um, it's still in the works, and
Okay.
potentially some ducks as well.
Oh boy.
But where we live, we have so many coyotes out here.
Oh, yeah, you've got to
I have to
build
be
stuff.
I have to make sure my cages are built properly and things like that. And I haven't had the time. If I could let them just free range, and coop up at night, that'd be cool. But they'd get picked off one by one.
Yeah. See,
We
I
have
can do
foxes.
that, but
We
I've
have
always,
native foxes
oh boy.
populations as well. So between the red and gray foxes and the coyotes, the bobcats, it's just like it's disaster waiting to happen. They'd wipe me out.
Totally.
But
That makes
once
sense.
I do plan on building, some rolling coops and things like that. I'm just so behind.
Oh yeah, no rush. It's a nice thing to have. I was just curious.
It is definitely, and there's a lot of times. I mean, I really wish I had them set up already. We could use the eggs, but luckily we have, a couple local sources where we can get $3 a dozen,
Nice.
or organic eggs that are
That's a
local.
real good price.
It's a good price. It's a good deal, and I'll take them leftover chilies. I've got a few gallon bags for them so they can blend into their feed and kind
Nice.
of keep the mice away and enrich those yolks.
Okay. That's a cool
Because
trick.
I don't know if you know this.
No,
Go
I
ahead and say
didn't.
this for anybody
Yeah.
that doesn't know. So if you're raising chickens, which I'm not, but I plan on it. Take ground up chilies, super hots, whatever. Chickens don't taste. They won't pick up on the heat, the capsaicin. So they'll just peck away at the super hot peppers, and it keeps the mice away from your feed. So the mice won't get
Oh,
chicken feed. Yeah. So
that's
you
a
just
really
ground
good
up.
trick.
Yeah, you ground up your super hots, big, nice flakes. Throw them in there. You don't have to grind them into a powder, so you're gassing yourself out. But yeah, just crush up your dried peppers and throw them into your feed, and it also enriches the yolks and makes them nice and dark and dark orange, almost red. So makes for some really beautiful eggs.
Awesome. I might try that if I have some freezer peppers turn on me, or if I freezer burned or whatever. I don't have enough peppers where I'm growing right now where I'm gonna give any to the chickens, but that's a good
Dude, I will
idea.
gladly send you a few bags of peppers to. I've got some from 2, 3 years ago. I've got pounds and pounds of dried
Okay.
peppers.
We'll get
Yeah, so I'll
together
gladly.
offline, dude.
Yeah, I'll definitely send you some. Let's see how this changes your yolk. I want to see firsthand.
Okay. I've got one chicken that's laying right now, and the other two are just old. I'm getting new chickens in the spring. It might be
She's
better to
about to
wait.
get spicy.
Oh yeah, we're gonna have one spicy chicken. So, I wanted to ask you. I am making an assumption here that you grow indoors as well as outdoors because you're breeding.
Yeah, yeah,
Do you run LEDs or HPS, or do you run a mixture of that, or?
yeah. I'll run a mixture quite a bit. It's just kind of for me. It depends on the season. Um,
Oh, okay.
I've got LEDs that I'll run. Um, but at the same time, in the winter, sometimes I'll crank up one of my double ended HPSs just for that added heat. It's probably better for me to just throw a little heater in, but I'm kind of old school.
Okay.
But I'm probably done. I think I'm done. The cost, per watt is just it's kind of up there, and I think it's time to flip the page there and just stick with LEDs. And it is. I
Okay.
will say it's hard for me to put my 315. I like the CMHs, so it's hard for me to put those down. I like to put them in the corners, of the room. So usually I have a smaller flower room now.
Okay.
Having a big room here is kind of useless in Illinois. Our plant counts are kind of shit.
Oh, how many
So
can you flower?
10.
Oh, that's not very
Um,
many.
not very many. Now there are ways. There are some ways around it.
Right.
Um, and one of which is a hemp license, which I
Okay, I
didn't.
got
I
you.
didn't. Yeah, I didn't mess with any of that this year. But in Illinois, if now you have to kind of skirt a gray line. If you're into growing land races and things like that, I would 100% get hemp license here in Illinois, um, or any state for that matter, because it's going to provide you with some protections that you otherwise didn't have. Um, one of which is land race rights. A lot of states will give you the right to grow land races that haven't been properly tested yet. So even if they're COAs for plants from Pakistan, there's probably not COAs from a specific valley in Pakistan, which
Okay.
might give you different genotypic variations. So, with that being said, if you get your hemp license, you can have the right to grow those and test those plants and breed those plants as well.
Okay.
So that's something anybody I would tell anybody look into that. Look into your local laws, look into your state laws, and see if your hemp license allows you the right to grow landrace genetics. And if so, jump on. Start breeding some landrace genetics and start preserving land races. It's important. And it's cool to see that a lot of people have been doing that lately too. And that's one reason why I've stepped back a little bit. I'm not really breeding as many land races right now. I feel like the torch has kind of been passed on, and enough people are doing that at this moment that I don't have to really focus on that.
Right. You feel like the you feel like the niche is being filled by other capable breeders.
Yeah, I do at the moment. And there was a time I didn't think that was the case. You had a few people doing that were, competent breeders, and that was it. Now that's not really the case. I see a lot of people preserving and working lines, and that's really cool.
Okay. So I had a question because I've always struggled with the best method to do this. So let's say someone handed you a 12 pack of seeds. And let's say first of all, let's assume that you could flower, all 12 or whatever females you got out of it. Let's assume that you didn't have like a crazy plant count and you were only growing this thing, right? How would you go about like narrowing those 12 seedlings down to, however many keepers you thought were in that pack if you were looking to keep a couple of cuts around?
Yeah. Um, you know, First off, if I'm not looking to F2 the line to open it up and really look, and I'm just looking, through those 12, um, the first thing I'm doing is taking anything out that doesn't veg right. If something has a mutation that really stunts its growth or makes it undesirable, or if it just doesn't have the proper branching, or if it doesn't clone well, things like that, then it doesn't even make it to flower. There's
Okay.
no use. There's no use for me to even take it to that point or to clone it. I might flower it out for personal smoke, but there's not really any reason for me to like keep that going forward.
Okay.
Um,
So you would take cuts of everything that veg to the point where you were going to flower it. So you would take cuts of everything you decided to put into flower at that point. Like so.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, and so then basically at that point, I'm going to go ahead and assign a ranking system. My favorite vegging plant, the one that veggies and just gives me the most, like, which one has that aura, which one's speaking to you, which one, like, gives you the good energy and just has the structure you're looking for. That one is my number one right off the bat.
Okay. Cool.
Um, and then once I'm into flower, obviously you're looking for intersex. Um, you're looking for resin. Does it flower true to the genetics? Are the terpenes on point for what they should be? Uh, is the resin production high? Does it handle dry bikes very well? What happens if it gets dry one time and then the leaves just immediately, you know, yellow out and fall off on me? Or does it bounce back and show that it's resilient? Those are things I'll look for.
That's
And then
actually a
obviously,
really good thing to look forward to because I've noticed that I'll dry back my home grow, especially in organics and stuff, a little further than I mean to sometimes. And a lot of times, most of the robust genetics, especially the autoflowers, they'll droop a little bit, but they won't start yellowing for a day sometimes.
yeah, yeah, and that's something I look for. It's because that's important. Not everybody's grow environment's going to be dialed in like you know to lab standards. Some are. I'm always shocked when I see some of the grow setups I see and some of the equipment and new technology. You know, and then I'm always equally shocked when I find out the lead grower doesn't really know anything about plants from a botanical point of view. Um, so yeah, there's drawbacks are important, and then after that, how does it smoke? That's the biggest test, obviously. If it
Right,
passes,
yeah.
if it passes everything up to that point, how does it smoke? And that's where you're going to find your true answer.
So it takes 4 to 5 months before
Yeah,
you can
and
even
then
really make a pick.
yeah, and then you hope that everything checks the boxes, and then if so, it comes back around.
Right. So this whole time you're eliminating cuts. Like so if you have let's say 5 females in that pack. Let's say you're not super lucky but you're okay lucky and you get 5 females. of
Yep.
those 5 females. So you kill all the males because you're not looking to breed. You're not looking for a stud male. You're just looking for a couple of female cuts to keep them around and maybe keep running. And let's say you're on a funk hunt and you're looking at an indica leaning plant. So you're looking for a standard, like funky, short internodal spacing indica. 3 of those 5 smell like juicy fruit gum. So you decide to get rid of them. And then one of the others doesn't root well when you try to clone it. So at the end of that, you've got your winner just based on resiliency and the terpene profile.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, interesting. Okay, cool.
And that's typically how I do it. It's I won't say it's as rigorous as some people, but for me, it helps me find what I'm looking for the majority of the time. And most of the time when I flower a plant out, my selection is of number one is pretty close to what I want, in the plant.
Right.
And it might that might be due to me, working with a lot of these genetics for so many years and knowing what I'm looking for ahead of time. So for somebody that's working with a new line, it always helps to reach out to the breeder and ask them questions. See if the breeder can answer questions about their own genetics, and if they can't, you may not even want to grow their gear in the first place.
Well, that's honestly that's one of the reasons I frequently go with your company for like indica genetics specifically because you and I have a similar desire for like what we look for in a backyard indica plant. And
Yeah,
so I'm like, "Hey, okay, so I see your line, you're running a sale. Which 2 packs should I buy?" Or like which one, and you'll give me 3 and then I'll go to my partner and we'll look at the 3 you give me and pick 1 or 2. And so it's nice to be able to work with a breeder that you can be like, "Hey, I like it stinky. Maybe a little sweetness is fine, but I don't want like a lot of candy. Want to be
yeah,
heavy, almost like a narcotic, like dragging me to the ground." And then you can and you have that conversation. And I understand that a lot of people are really busy, but even a lot of the crazy big seed banks have people that are like manning their social media and will try to answer your questions, or they should.
yeah. They definitely should.
Speaking of genetics that we're excited about, what are you working with currently that has you excited? I know you just
That's a good
smoked some
question.
seeded weed.
Yeah, I did. So, I've been just quietly just kind of working. I haven't been releasing a lot of stuff, a lot of newer stuff anyway. Just kind of in-house testing. Uh,
Okay.
so I've got some bed of coals that I've been working on. It's Fire OG cross to Sleeping with the Stars,
Oh, okay.
and so that is it's really tasty and just smacks the head. Um, I've been really impressed with it so far. I'm gonna run those again and see about potentially F2ing that.
Okay.
And
I'd be
doing a
interested in
small,
that because I got a
yeah,
Fire OG cross from you that was crossed with that Aga Black that I ran a couple times that was amazing. That Maroof, what was it? It was Fire of
Fire of
Maroof.
Maru. Yeah,
Oh, that thing put on. I would honestly, I kind of wish I'd try to keep that even though I didn't have the setup because it was like a true like 45, 50 dayer indoors and it put on chonky nugs outside.
yeah. That Aga line, the Maroof line from Indian Landrace Exchange was incredible. I've
Yeah.
seen a lot of people create some really nice stuff with those. Um, yeah, and I'm actually I've got a Durrani Kush that is uh, Hannibal OG to Maroof Red.
Okay.
It's really nice. It's like a cross between a stepping in a Foot Locker and a leather shop. It's just leather and rubber. It's really nice. Finishes really quick as well. That packy side, the half pack side of things just really helps things finish up quick. Aside from that, I think I'm working towards my first feminized line for public
Ooh.
release.
Okay.
I've got a few select cuts of GMO Fuel F5 and a few others that kind of check all the boxes, to be reversed. So, um, a
So,
good
yeah. The GMO flowers a long time though, doesn't it?
the GMO fuel, the F6s and F5s are going about 10 weeks for people.
Okay.
So I've trimmed some time off of the GMO and kept all of the funk intact. Um, yeah, because GMO people can push it 12, 13 weeks.
Yeah, that's a long time to sit on a flowering plant.
It is. It is. A lot of time for a lot of people to make mistakes as well.
Well, and
Or
that's kind of, yeah,
and
pests.
and for a typical home grower, I don't think a lot of people want to wait that long. There are your sativa lovers. Some people out there just love the 20 plus weekers. Those people were probably, Buddhist monks in the past life. I was not. Um, so I don't have the patience for those. They
No, I
also they
think
also typically don't work for me medically either. Um,
right.
they're they're nice smoke sometimes, but they don't really work for me on a medical level.
I find that to be true too. I find they lack some of the pain relieving aspects of some of the more shorter, stouter plants, more traditional indica. I know that with hybridization, a lot of that indica sativa expression has become blurred. But what I mean by
Yeah,
that is, what people stereotypically mean. Sativas can be racy, and I have PTSD. I don't need racy weed. It's not what I'm after. Even the quote sativas I grow are not really that racy. Like I've grown amnesia haze in the past, and the ones that I get don't put you to sleep, but I wouldn't describe them as racy, if you know what I
yeah,
mean.
yeah. Same here. Uplifting maybe, but racy not so much.
Yeah,
GMO
dreamy.
GMO fuel can be overpowering at times. It can cause some anxiety in people.
Right.
And that's one thing I always tell people. If you're looking for something that's going to be sedative, this isn't for you. I mean, it will put you down, but after an hour and a half of you know questioning life and all your decisions you've made, and you know every aspect of anything, it really makes your mind race and your heart thump a little bit sometimes.
You come down like a bottle rocket.
That's right.
Um, do you ever use greenhouses when you're growing?
Oh yeah, I'm
Um,
actually in my greenhouse right now.
Oh, okay. I saw some pictures on your Instagram. That's why I was asking. I had some questions. Are there any challenges growing with greenhouses that people may not consider when they're getting into them?
Heat.
Okay.
So yeah, obviously, if your temperature outside is 96, inside you're going to be probably 116 unless you have a way to cool it. Um, I don't. My sides roll up. One side faces the road, so I kind of have to keep it down.
Right.
Um, and then once flour's set, I like to roll it down and lock it. So I'll just put locks on every side.
Okay.
And that kind of keeps me legal as well. It has to be in a locked facility, a locked and closed facility. Once I put the locks on it, then I'm good to go.
Oh, that makes
Um,
sense. So that kind of actually that in one way that law actually works for cultivators. You lock it down when it becomes flowering and you need to trap a little more heat because it's getting cooler anyway.
that's right.
Nice.
So, and then I have my backside. If it gets too hot, I can roll it up. Um, yeah. So heat is an issue. Also, pathogens. Soil quality. Your soil has to be really high quality. You don't want to come into things with a deficiency. If you're growing in the ground, you need to make sure you have plenty of calcium. Um, that for me was my biggest lesson. First few years I would be cruising through, and then about halfway through the flower cycle, I'd hit a calcium bump, and the next thing you know, my plants look like shit. Um,
I
so
had really hard fades up until probably 2 years ago. Like really like if I had to go an extra 2 weeks, it was a problem.
yeah, yeah. So that was the same for us, and now that's not an issue. Um, so if you're growing in containers, which a lot of people do, you have to make sure that you're properly amended without being too hot. For anybody that's in a greenhouse, I would hope they understand living soils and things of that nature. Sure, not everybody utilizes them. The greenhouse is the same. Not everybody's organic, um, but the same rules apply. Pathogens. It's going to be warmer, so it's harder to get rid of some pests.
Right.
You got to be on point with your sprays. Time your sprays properly, so you're not out here damaging bees and bee populations. That's something I spray at night. We do have fabric in our greenhouse that kind of keeps the dust down.
Okay.
Um, we had it excavated and we're heavy clay here, so the soil was just really hard. It's taken me 3 years before I could get plants in the ground without showing deficiencies, before flower. And I think this year is the first year I've really been just kind of cruising through now, and the plants are just really thriving.
What did that process look like over 3 years? Were you adding dry amendments? What were you doing?
Yeah, lots of glacial rock dust, lots of crab meal, lobster meal, things of that nature, fish bone, um, things that break down quickly, provide a lot of calcium, and a heavy phosphorus punch and potassium as well.
Okay.
It seemed like my nitrates were fine here. I never had problem with yellowing out in veg. It was always the transition to flower. So I knew I needed more calcium. I knew I needed more phosphorus and potassium in the soil. Um, I'm sure the micros were off as well, boron and things like that. But once you come in and you just have to over apply everything, whatever you think you need in ground, you're pretty much going to want to double it. And
Oh, wow.
that's been the case for me. It's not the case for everybody, but we had to excavate a pad for our greenhouse, and when we did it, we stripped away the topsoil. So
Oh,
it's just been
right.
about, yeah. So lots of cover crops like radishes, turnips, things that you can grow and will create big bulbous roots, and
Okay.
then you can just let them die back and decompose in the soil.
Don't
So
people
it
use
builds.
borage for that sometimes too?
Yep, borage is good. We've rotated alfalfa, oat, wheat, barley, in the off seasons just to kind of build up that topsoil.
And you're just turning that in when it's done. You're not harvesting that, right?
Right, yeah. We
Okay.
and we have been tilling. It's hopefully I can be no till within a year or two.
Totally.
But right now I'm just too compacted. If I want healthy plants, I have to till. So I till and then I lay my fabric down. Well, I'll till, rake everything, and then I'll put down um, alfalfa seed in the spring so that I get the microgreens to come up, and then I put my fabric down. Then in the off season, I pull my fabric back, mulch, try to lay down a nice layer of mulch and cover crop, and just let it kind of do its thing until spring again.
Okay. So you're running like a kind of what I'm learning or what I would consider like a standard kind of cannabis grower outdoor indoor split. So you flower outdoors, in the natural time, October, September time frame, maybe into November, but maybe not in the
Right.
greenhouse. And then you cover crop the greenhouse and bring all your cannabis production indoors, correct?
Correct.
Okay, cool. Okay, I got it. Okay, awesome.
Yep. And then in the off season, from November through, well, really October, it starts up. Through the spring, I'll just be hunting for new lines and working new stuff. I grow indoors a little bit in the summer as well. It's just the heat, and I usually cut my plants way down. It's just a couple plants for seed production typically in the summer.
Yeah, I've got three plants indoors right now. I usually and in the winter it goes up substantially. I run a 4x4 in my garage, but in the summer I just can't. Can't do that. It's too much variation in the weather and heat and everything, and I don't feel like nor do I have the finances to insulate my garage effectively to make that a good lung room, you know?
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at right now too.
And honestly, with my plant counts, it would be kind of silly to invest all that money for really what the end result would be an additional like 4 feet of grow space. When
Yeah,
I don't know with a 10, because I can flower 10 at a time. Sometimes I'll be bad and go one over, but usually not. But um, you know, I if I had that much space, I would probably be going way over my plant count, which I don't have any desire to do when I'm fully legal to grow trees outside in October.
right. That changes things.
One thing I last year a couple of my trees got stolen. It was actually my outdoor run of that last outdoor run of that uh fire of my roof. And so that's been added paranoia. So the plants are a little bit smaller, but I found that they've been a little easier to manage, a little bit smaller. So I may not push as hard for size next year and favor discretion. We'll see.
Yeah, this season is probably the biggest plants that I've ever seen and that I've grown. Um, I'm kind of blown away at the size.
How big are they?
Um, let's see, probably 10 and a half, 11 foot tall.
Trees. Nice.
Yeah, uh, 8 to 10 foot, wide all the way around.
Oh, you've
So
got those trellis, right?
yeah, that's what I've been doing is just
Okay.
trellising the
Okay,
past
good.
week or two. Yeah. Yeah, some of them are trellised to the rafters of the greenhouse. They're so
Oh
big.
man. See, I've seen a lot of more people recently in the past few years growing really big plants, and they're like lifetime like big time cannabis growers, but they're not experienced outdoors.
Yeah.
And so I'm seeing like dudes I look up to like growing these like 8 9 footers and there's nothing on them, and I'm like, hey, you know, why don't you throw, I see you got bamboo. Why don't you throw like, throw some T-posts or a trellis on there, or maybe stake down a trellis net on there. Like, nah. I'm like, oh, okay. And then it'll rain real hard, and
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, and it'll just half of their shit breaks, and you're like, well, and that's how I learned. The first year I didn't trellis anything, and I got lucky. I balled out. I grew 2 plants, no idea what I was doing, and I got a pound off of 2 plants. It was amazing. But the pest hadn't found me yet, and I just got really lucky. The next year I did the same thing, and I lost a lot of branches.
Yeah, I've had that happen as well. And then, once the pests find you, it's over.
Yeah, I have to spray, I mean, clear up until early flower something, even if it's just Dr. Zymes. If I'm not, I won't make it all the way to at the end of flower around here. It was really bad when hemp cultivation took off in Oregon, like to an insane amount, because there was just so much untreated host populations for pests
Yeah.
in the environment that like I just couldn't keep aphids off my plants. It was a nightmare. And the last few years it's calmed down, but I've also tightened my shot group on IPM to
Yeah,
to a
you
de-
just
to
gotta
a de-
have to have a tight program these days because, with the market being what it is, the influx of pests has been greater than ever.
Yeah, and that's another reason why I like the winter weather coming in, getting cold, and also the pests is why I get really nervous around some of the longer flowering strains. I've got the Maroof Red I've got right now, I think is going to be a long flowerer because I've got one indoors that's going and it's way behind the other plant that's in there with it. So I think it's going to be a long flowerer. I know things can be a little different outdoors, but I'm not sure. It's going to be weird. We're going to be
Yeah, it looks like most of my open sun plants are, for the most part, are going to finish early this year, which is cool. Which they're all seeded up as well.
Right.
Usually, I'll have a tiny little plot where I kind of go above my plant count, but I seed everything the fuck up. So it's kind of a no harm, no foul thing. I'm like, hey, if I was to get popped, I'd be like, hey guys, it's all seeded. Come
Right.
on, come
Come on,
on,
come
it's
on,
seeds.
come on. Well, and anymore, the thing I've noticed is if you're on a small plot cultivation, at least here, the sheriff's department's not gonna bust your ass over a fucking little dinky like you're one over in a 3 gallon sitting on the back porch. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
They're
yeah,
not because there's people. It's not worth their while. It just to be completely frank, and
yeah.
it's not really worth anyone's while really at that point.
In our area, there's a massive uh, problem with meth and pills. So somebody being 2 plants over is not. I don't think is the biggest deal for these
Mm-mm.
guys.
No, now when you get into the federal over plant counts, when you get to 99 plus, then you're just asking to get fucked with if you don't have the right paperwork for it. You're
Yeah,
just
exactly.
because at that point, and I don't know if people know this, but here's a good rule of thumb: 99 plus 99. So the minute you hit 100 plants, you're now in like federal enforcement interest territory, and you're looking at a different kind of felony.
Yeah, yeah. That's stay at 98,
That's what I
fellas.
always say.
Guys and gals, lovely beings out there. Yeah, stay at 98.
Yeah. Well, and they're busting so many grows out in Southern Oregon still with like thousands and thousands and thousands of plants, whole hillsides. And be nice to your neighbors because I feel like always when these people get busted, it's not because the cops caught them. It's not because the cops flew a drone overhead. It's because they were burning trash and the neighbor called
Yeah,
the. You know what I mean? Like
yeah.
it's you get busted the only time cops have been in my backyard is because someone drove their car through the fence. I mean, you never know how the outside world is going to catch you, and it's almost never you know, gumshoes on the beat.
Right.
I heard
Uh,
there was a story of people like running into the backyard from the cops and growers getting busted that way because someone just hopped their fence, shit like that.
did I ever tell you the story of my grow that my alleged grow I had in Kentucky?
Nah, tell me.
Okay, so I had this small farmhouse you know, in the outskirts of Western Kentucky, and allegedly, according to the state police, I was growing in it. So for whatever reason, I lived. All right, here, let me rephrase. I lived on 20 acres. It was wildlife conservation, basically. The guy that owned it lived in Austin, Texas, and he was a huge conservationist. His whole family was. So this was outside of the Mammoth Cave biosphere.
Okay.
And so he basically got paid to just let this land grow up in wildflowers. So to get to my house, you had to drive about 3/4 of a mile down a gravel road that was just surrounded by 7, 8 foot tall wildflowers and native grasses on
Okay.
both sides. So I existed out there like peacefully for 2.5, 3 years. Um, then one day, they came and sprayed all of the land, surrounding land on that surrounded my house. I was surrounded by wildflowers. Right, they sprayed it all and killed everything with Roundup.
Shit.
Yeah, so I call the property manager, and she contacts the owner, and she's like, "Oh, he didn't okay this." So I immediately move all my plants, kill everything, uh, deep clean the house, pine sol, Murphy soap, on the hardwood floors to get that old smell, all the cannabis smell out, alleged cannabis smell out. And I know how they work on a Rico. They can fucking assholes, man. So, deep clean everything. I call my buddy up. I'm like, hey, do you want this couch? Do you want this mattress? It's pretty much brand new. I can't take it with me. I'm out. So the next day, I borrow a buddy's truck. I'm taking the mattress and couch to, my buddy's 19-year-old son so he can have a new couch and mattress for his new apartment.
Nice.
And yeah, I was doing a good deed, I thought, getting the fuck out of Dodge in the meantime. And I get pulled over for not using a turn signal. And
Shit.
I definitely used my turn signal. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
One of those instances where I was already on edge. I knew what was going on. I did have a gram on me in Kentucky, less than 4 ounces of a misdemeanor. So
Yeah.
I traveled with a little smoke. I had about a gram of some really fire bud on me. White gold OG. I'll never forget. And so they pull me over. They go through the routine, and he's like, Miss Ali, I think you know why we pulled you over. And I was like, no. He said, well, you didn't use a turn signal, but that's not why we pulled you over. I think you know what's going on. And I was like, no, I don't know what's going on. I don't know why you pulled me over. I used my turn signal. One thing leads to another. He's like, well, I'll have the detective explain. So I'm just sitting there in my buddy's truck, and I text him. I'm like, hey, buddy, James, I got pulled over. It's going to take a little bit longer. Next thing I know, a detective knocks on my window, and he's like, yeah, you live at blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, yeah. He's like, well, we know you're growing dope there. And I was like, that's crazy. You can't really grow dope. It's like you can manufacture dope, but you can't really grow it. And he's like, you think you know what I'm talking about. I was like, well, look, man, if I'm growing dope at this farm, let's go to this farm and let me show you all the dope I'm growing. And he's like, all right, well, we can either follow you or you can ride with us. And I'm like, well, follow me, right? I'll use my white privilege in this situation. And they actually let me drive the truck without detaining me
Nice.
to the property, which was about 2 miles away. So we get there, and I already know, I've deep cleaned. Like
Yeah.
I feel like I'm a step ahead in this situation, and we show up, and they're pissed.
Yeah.
They would go through the house, and they're just fucking pissed. They're so mad. There's nothing in there.
Uh-huh.
They find one gallon pot that had with a paint marker written on it, Roswell across to Oregon lemons. And he's like, well, what's this? If you weren't growing pot in here, what's this? And I was like, those are chili peppers, man. Those are from some super hot chili peppers.
And of course
Roswell,
you
New
had been
Mexico.
growing chilies too.
Yeah, I was like, Roswell, New Mexico. It turns out Roswell is one of the dankest strains I've ever made, probably. I
Okay.
would be trimming it, and my neighbor would come down from a half a mile up the road and be like, hey, man, I can smell you. And I'd be like, all right, thanks, dude. It was like that. So they were pissed. They ended up taking my weed. Uh, by this point, I'm on a tirade, bitching them out for poisoning the land. I'm looking at 20 dead acres. You know what I mean?
Right, yeah.
So I'm like, can I at least throw my weed out in the field to feed the fucking quail that you just poisoned? And they're like, yeah, and so I throw the weed out there, and they make me break my pipe. Um, homie in Nebraska blew it for me, and it wouldn't break. I was stomping it with my boots. It wouldn't break. I told him to take it. I was like, you guys can just take it. This shit's American made. It's not breaking.
Just
And
doing your own dead parking lot demo. Ting 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 ting.
yeah, 100%. Ting
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 ting,
ting ting
dropping,
ting.
stomping it. And I was like, yeah, it's not breaking. My homie
$5,
blows.
man.
My homie blows proper glass. This is inside out fume. It's not breaking, dildo. So that was that, man. We were living in Michigan about a month later. We got the
Awesome.
fuck out. Yeah. Yeah. So that was my dodge. And then, obviously we came back from Michigan a few years after that, started a hemp farm, and somehow here I am fighting the state police 5 years later for taking my hemp. So,
That's still going on.
still going on.
So you see,
They,
because last time we talked to you, you thought you were done, basically.
yeah. So they were found negligent. The state police were found negligent. They brought in an expert from the University of Kentucky, some douchebag that's never grown a plant a day in his life. They're not only that has he not grown a plant a day in his life. He admitted to that under oath. He also unknowingly admitted to basically he exposed how and I'll get the transcripts. He exposed how the entire hemp market is controlled by basically one quote unquote cannabis stock exchange company out of Colorado. And that's all I'll say about that at the moment. So the prices for every farmer are being manipulated for processors because of this one company. It's fucking dirty, dirty stuff. And that's the true reason why the price per pound dropped out on the hemp market. It's not because there was an influx of hemp. The influx of quality hemp is still down. There's not a lot of quality hemp. There's not a lot of really good smokable flower when it comes to hemp. So that argument is dead as fuck. The real problem is that a few conglomerates got together and decided to rig the pricing so that their processors, are getting pounds on the low and making top overhead. So anyway, back to
That's
the story.
disappointing. We'll have to talk about that more in depth the next time you come back on.
Yeah, I'll have to get the transcripts and stuff and get cleared by the attorney to talk about it because it's deep. It's deep as fuck.
Yeah.
So they brought in this douchebag to try and say that our hemp was basically worthless. Cross-examination, we absolutely fucking cooked them. So after our case, the hearing officer stepped down. So the state of Kentucky had to appoint a new hearing officer for the state police. So now I think they've got a new one appointed, and we're just waiting for them to get back to our case. We're just in waiting mode at this point. We basically won. We found we proved that the state police were negligent. Now we're just trying to get some compensation for 5 years of fighting the state police. That shit's not cheap,
No.
I'm probably 120, 130,000 deep in attorney fees, even with what we've paid. And the cap on any winnings in Kentucky in a case like this is $250K. So it's not like we're going to come out on top and be rich as fuck. There's a chance we could win and still lose a lot of money.
Right.
Which right now, we've won. We proved they were guilty. We proved they were wrong. We proved they were fucking liars. So at the very least, I'm going to release the documents. I'm going to release the parts of the hearing, because some of the lies and some of the bullshit they just try to pass off as truth is just disgusting. It's vile. And the fact that they would do this to farmers, in a state like Kentucky where they pride themselves on farming and hemp and tobacco, the fact that they could treat a small family farm like this is fucking despicable. And so, when the time comes, I'll spit on their grave. Until then, I'll fight them to the grave.
Well, and the whole community appreciates it. I'm glad that you finally won your fight, and hopefully they don't drag out the compensation hearings too much longer, because it's been, almost a year here in 2 months from when we thought that this was going to be over.
Yeah, it's been a while.
But Dr. Grenskye, we are just past an hour now, and I've got to go. Is there anything you'd like to let the listener know before you go? Obviously, where can they find you?
Yeah, I'm working on a new website, so I'll have that up and running soon. If you want to check my Instagram out, that's right now the only place you can really find me. I'm Dr. Grenskye. That's DrGrenskye. Dr. Grenskye on Instagram. Yeah, and I'll have a website up, rssc.com, very soon.
Well, we look forward to finding you on Instagram and on the web. Thank you so much for being on the Bag Seed Chronicles. Let's overthrow the world. It's been a pleasure. Fun. Yes. All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
It's Tom Wisdom. S&T Records. Let's get it. Zecca on the beat. I'm riding all the homies homies with me. Yeah, we been getting hella faded. Just like our eyes, we be staying low-key. Vibing out, always staying medicated. I'm riding, all the homies with me. Yeah, we been getting hella faded. Just like our eyes, we be staying low-key. Vibing out, always staying medicated. I'm gonna get lit, take another fat rip off this bomb shit. Can't get enough of it, yes. Hitting the best feeling.
If you're still listening, you are awesome. And if you like the Backseat Chronicles, you should share with a friend.